I'll be discussing networking with purpose on LinkedIn. We have got quite a tight pack agenda with a few different topics to cover. So first would be networking and community. So how does our network work and how do you benefit and use that network for your own purposes? The second would be a few networking exercises, just to give you a bit of context around how networking with purpose can be implemented and to give you a few thoughts about how to view this exercise. And then lastly, of course, closing questions. So if you do have any questions further to this, type anything in the comments or anything like that. So networking and community. The first thing I think we need to do is just understand how LinkedIn is actually set up and the scale of the network. So currently we have 675 million members worldwide. Actually, this figure is pretty much already defunct as of the 18th of May. I believe now we have 690 million members at our last count. We have 50 million companies on our system as well, 20 million jobs, and then of course 90,000 schools. And this has actually been an interesting phenomenon for us, where we've actually first looked at universities as that first port of call, universities, technical colleges, but we've actually broadened that out to schools, like high schools as well, just to further enhance networking and alumni groups. So currently, just to give you a perspective in terms of where our populations sit within LinkedIn, as you can tell, in the UK, we have 28 million members and 211 million members in the European Union. Our biggest markets are certainly Europe, of course, and our quickest growing markets are the APAC regions such as India, China, and Australasia. Those are certainly some of the areas where we're finding a rapid growth. And we also expect that LATAM, so Latin America, would be in that area as well as the internet infrastructure increases there. So how does networking work, or how does networking work on LinkedIn? Well, it follows the principle of first, second, and third degree connections. You may be familiar with the term that everyone's connected in the world with 5 degrees of separation. Well, this uses a very similar methodology. So in this example, I have 101 members that I'm connected to, and that is somebody I've connected with on a personal basis. I've sent them a connection request. They've accepted that request, and as a result, they are my first degree connection. The second level to that is if I've connected with an individual, however, they have a connection that I'm not connected to. So imagine they had 200 connections as an example. Their 200 connections will be my second degree connections. Now, where this becomes really interesting is where I have 101 members, and that scales across to all of my connections. And as a consequence, my second degree connections, or the amount of people I'm connected to on a second degree basis, is far larger than my first degrees. Where this really starts to gather a lot of scale is at that third degree connection. So those second degree connections may have 200, 300, 400 connections of their own as well. And that broadens out that connection base potentially to 1.5 million connections. And this is the principle that our system works on. So we'll see posts from our first degree connections and second degree connections. We can drop them in mails. And then of course, from a searching perspective, we can search out those third degree connections. So how does this work in principle, or how does this benefit me if I'm networking? Well, if I was a sales professional, chances are if I connect with other sales professionals, their contacts or their colleagues or the individuals that they're connected to are more likely to be salespeople as a consequence. And out of that majority of salespeople that they're connected to, it goes so far as to say that the majority of their connections may be sales professionals. And as a consequence, I have a really large network of sales professionals that I can dip into, learn from, find names, and potentially network with. So you might be thinking, okay, so that's great. How do I get my first 101 connections? Well, it all starts with an email. It starts with building those connections and going and proactively pursuing a connection base. Now, in this instance, you may not have many connections just yet, and that's okay. One of the things you can start with is maybe connecting with not only your class group, your peer groups, and people that you know in your current circles, family, friends, uncles, sports teams, anything like that that you've participated in. That is a good base to start your network with. But as your career starts to transform, as you start to find work or start to participate in activities, you'll start to find that your network starts to take a direction in terms of the types of individuals you're connecting with. And if you're proactively networking, one of the things you can do is proactively identify individuals that fit that spec in terms of the network that you want to be part of and create. So when I am sending a message to somebody to connect, I usually try and give them a reason to connect. And this is really important to differentiate yourself from many other individuals. As an example, you're starting your career at the moment. How do I connect with maybe a director at a business? Well, it's quite simply, flattery goes a long way. So sending a director to a business an email, something along the lines of, hi, I'm just graduating a marketing degree at X and Y Z university. I'm really interested in finding out a little bit more about how to become a director within a top business such as yourselves. Would it be okay if I connected with you just to see what are the things that you share, post, and potentially talk about? And that's a nice soft way of having an introduction. Will it always work? No, not necessarily. It is somebody else's network that you are trying to tap into. So being as honest and upfront with them as possible, I think you'll find goes a long way. Not everyone will say yes, of course not. But certainly if you send 10 connection requests with a great message attached to it, more than likely 5 to 6 of those individuals will connect. Remember, once you connect with these individuals, that's not where the journey ends. It's not a collection of a Rolodex. It is using those networks in a proactive way to further advance not only your network, but your knowledge and potential experience. So this takes me to my next topic. How do I get a higher acceptance rate for those connection requests? Well, asking for referrals is a really good way of doing it. And I suppose this actually follows a lot of the things that we do naturally within society in any case. So as an example, if I am in a group and I don't know somebody in a group, I'll ask, hi guys, who is this? And I'll ask for somebody to introduce me to this person in this group. Or alternatively, if I bring somebody new with me into a group, I'll probably introduce them to all of my friends and colleagues to say, hey, this is so-and-so, just to ensure that, that everybody knows each other. And this is no different on LinkedIn. Asking for referrals is okay, especially if it's from one of your first degree connections that you know really well. So in this example here, Bruna is my second degree connection. And I'd really like to connect with Bruna. She works at part of my business. She's in the same industry as myself. And it turns out she shares 69 connections with me. So we're actually in the same circle of friends, quite honestly. But I just never met her personally. So my connection path here, I could choose 2 people potentially, or maybe 69 other people to introduce me to Bruna. But I trust my colleague, Anita Windesman. She sits right next to me at the business, and I would ask her, hi, Anita, would you mind introducing me to Bruna Gill? I think we're in the same industry. I think we share a lot of the same practices. In fact, I'd love to have a chat with her, just if we could, about the following topics. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm giving Anita a reason for us to be connected, and she'll then say, of course, allow me to make that introduction to you and get you to connect. And this is how you can use a soft approach by using your network to further connect with individuals. This becomes more and more effective as you're trying to get in touch with more and more people that are maybe at a higher level or a desired level, or the desired level of popularity, as an example, by having those introductions, especially when individuals really look after the networks very carefully and only connect with people that, as I said, where they try and foster a great network. So this is one way you can help with that introduction. So moving on from here, I think one of the things is connecting. How do I connect quick and fast, especially when I'm on the go? Well, if you are connecting nearby with people, you can use your QR code on your LinkedIn app. And it's quite easy. All you need to do is actually download the LinkedIn app on your phone if you don't have it already. And you'll notice that there is a little button there with a bit of squiggles there, and that's actually a QR code reader. Once you select it, you have two options, whether or not you want to scan somebody's code or display your own code. And all you do is display your own code and then either scan somebody's code or let somebody scan your code using the MyScan feature. And this is a quick way to identify. Personally, I use this at networking events where usually I'd meet maybe 10, 20, 30 people in the night. And I'm really bad with remembering people's names or having to have that uncomfortable moment where I have to ask, sorry, what's your name and surname? You know, and then kind of sounds like I'm, you know, I don't remember them. Well, the nice thing is like, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. And chances are they won't know about this QR code reader. So it's a great bond to say, oh, let me show this cool feature on LinkedIn. Here you go, click on this, do that. And as soon as you scan the QR code, it'll bring up their LinkedIn profile and you can click connect. In those instances, do you need to customize the message? Not necessarily, especially when you've already agreed to connect. So, you know, that's quick and easy. However, if you are connecting with somebody that you've not met, I'd strongly suggest to customize those messages. So managing your network. And this sounds quite obvious and it sounds like something we do, but quite often people don't do this. And I would say the first thing is, of course, to review your immediate network. Try and understand what does your network consist of. Is it family? Is it work? Is it professional aspiration? Whatever that might be. The next bit to this is try and identify individuals you'd like to network with. So as in my example, I work in customer success for LinkedIn. I'm interested in networking with all of the heads of customer success in Europe. So I've identified 100 companies, about all of the heads of customer success in these networks. And I'm working my way through a list of trying to identify, do we have mutual connections? What is my narrative going to be? And how I'm going to get in touch with these people. Will I be liking their content? Will I be sharing content with them? Will I be asking for a request? Will I be attending the same events? And that is kind of my idea of understanding what that network is and where I'm trying to get to with it. So by having that identification of those individuals, my third step in the long game, I can start to connect with those individuals and start to understand what those environments look like, not only from a professional context perspective, what's top of mind for those individuals, how are they structured, how are they organized, how do I even get to speak to a director at one of these businesses or head of these businesses. But it does mean that I start to proactively craft a network that is bespoke to myself and that serves my levels of knowledge and interest. And here's the thing, after I've connected with individuals, sometimes things just don't work out the way I thought they would. You know, sometimes the network's great and sometimes not so much. At that point, I rinse and repeat and reevaluate, right, who do I really want to connect with? As my career changes, I might move from customer success back into headhunting and recruitment as an example, which means that I'm going to have to pivot my network to maybe be more specific, more tailored towards recruiting in that instance. So certainly something to bear in mind that this is a living and breathing environment that you constantly have to reevaluate to make sure it gives you what you want from it. So here's a tip for you, and this is not necessarily a networking app or tip or whatever. This is more a tip along the lines of how do I network, get that network in place, and how do I serve that network? To be an active participant of a network is really important to provide value with the individuals that you've networked with. And also, we mentioned trying to get those, referrals from somebody. It helps if you've not been able to meet with them in person as regularly as you like, but certainly also to help not only foster yourself as a specialist in the field or a great social media poster. So the first thing, follow this link, www.linkedin.com/sales/SSI. And your SSI is your social selling index. And it's a measure we use at LinkedIn. This measure essentially looks at the types of postings that you do and where you feature in your network. It gives you a good understanding of how you're participating in that network and how, I suppose, from a LinkedIn perspective, you're engaging and providing service or content to those individuals. It's great because it also shows you where you feature in your network. So In my instance, yeah, I'm a 74 out of 100. That's great. A lot of people say, how do I get 100 out of 100? Look, that's highly unlikely to get 100 out of 100. It would mean you need to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And as your network grows, the more unlikely it becomes to get that 100 out of 100. But certainly one of the things here, it shows you how to establish a professional brand. And if you actually click on these features here, it tells you, gives you a tip sheet in terms of how to be more professional brand focused, as an example, or finding the right people. And finding the right people is, how do you network with those individuals, and also how are you liking and sharing their content, engaging with insights. So what are you pushing to your network? And then, of course, building relationships. Are you connecting regularly? Are you maintaining your connections? Are you maintaining your presence on LinkedIn? So yeah, this is a really good measure just to check how you're performing on the tool. Like I say, if you're a 1 out of 100, don't worry, it's okay. Like I say, this is not a hard and fast figure for you to keep an eye on. It is something to just help you just assess how you're doing on LinkedIn. And if you are looking to craft or create a network that's bespoke to yourself, this is a good way to go about it. So I have a few networking exercises here for you, and forgive me, we're not meeting in person. Otherwise there would be maybe a bit of a dramatic pause to say, hey, how did it go? All of those types of things. But certainly this is just something you might want to take away and just contextually think about what we're going to talk about here. So here's the first example. Typically we would break out into a room and we'd have a 5 networking exercise, and we'd introduce ourselves and just have a discussion. And in this topic, or this moment, we're going to discuss whether or not chess is a sport. Now, I would normally pause here for 5 minutes, of course, and then ask you to reflect on the conversation. However, we're going to skip through to those reflections straight away. So from that conversation, do you feel like you achieved anything during that conversation? Sure, I introduced myself. We had a debate whether or not chess is a sport. Great. And we spoke about it, and awesome. That's fantastic. How do we pitch up to this day today without having known that chess is a sport? Was it more like a general chat? Be honest, you know, probably it was. What was the purpose of this conversation? Is this what you signed up to do? Has this helped you in a business point of view? Probably not. And did this conversation help you push your career forward, move your career forward? Probably not. Maybe you've built a little bit of rapport, but I'm probably going to say that's where it's ended. So we're going to try this again, except this time we're going to be a bit more purposeful when we are networking, when we are asking questions, when we are trying to understand one another. So this time will be a 10-minute exercise, and we'll break out. And what we're trying to do is trying to understand what each of us are trying to achieve. We're trying to understand if we have common connections. We're trying to understand if we can help one another through introduction or connections or whatever that might be. Okay, so as an example here, someone else is looking to do business, and what are they trying to do? Well, as an example, I'm based in Canterbury in Kent, and I'm always interested in working with universities and educational institutions, not only from a lecturing perspective, but also not only to grow my network in Kent, but also from a professional perspective where I present a lot and have to keep on top of my game in terms of presenting. So those are the opportunities I'm always looking for. Turns out that through these types of exercises, I've been able to not only work with Canterbury Christchurch, but I've also worked with universities such as Brunel University on the other side of London. And those network connections came via me having that discussion, saying, hey, this is what I want to do. And my colleagues at Canterbury Christchurch introducing me to other universities, saying, hey, we'll work with Ralph on this front. Would you be interested in working with Ralph? Ralph, would you be interested in working with them? And as a consequence, I have now about 4 universities that I currently work with. And this is how I've furthered that professional aspiration, by pursuing this proactively, by being very clear about my communications on this specific topic. So I hope you've enjoyed this event or this webinar. I know it's quick, it's hard, it's fast. If you do have any questions, please look me up on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Other than that, I will wish you well, and thank you so much for listening. Appreciate the time. Thank you. Goodbye.